When I first started my business, I was very poor at cold calling. I was nervous about it, terrible. I didn't want to do it. It seemed very uncomfortable. But in all honesty, it's one of the better ways as you're getting started. And I tried to farm some of that out in my beginning early days of my business. But because I wasn't an expert on it myself and I wasn't good enough myself. I'm Scott Hess, tax and business consultant.
I'm John Barton, small business owner. Remember the tortoise and the hare? Slow and steady wins the race.
We started Turtlesmith to help people start small businesses, providing information and resources to small business owners and entrepreneurs.
Build a solid foundation and forge your dreams.
This is always annoying to ask, but if you're liking this content, please like and subscribe. It's the best way for us to get more followers and more people engaged in this great business content. You can also follow us on all socials at TurtlesmithOK and find us at turtlesmith.com.
Please like and subscribe.
What's going on, man? Back for another one.
Yes, we are, and you have successfully talked me off the ledge again.
Yeah.
So, if anybody wants to know what Turtlesmith is good for, that's at least one of them.
Yeah, calming you down a little after the headache of trying to get your new spot open.
Yeah, I honestly thought that it would be a lot easier. You warned me. You did, and as usual, I don't heed warnings.
Well, everybody thinks it's going to be a lot faster and a lot easier than it is, and unfortunately, we all plan to fail sometime or fail to plan on a few of these licenses taking forever.
Yeah, they sure do. I'll tell you what, it's now I understand why a lot of people prefer to just buy what they call turnkey businesses, where all those licenses are already set up, taken care of, grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, that's why they go for more money too.
Yeah. You can buy a business that's been there since 1970 and the inspectors don't even want to mess with you anymore.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
Buy that business.
Yeah,
if they're still going good, just pay the money and walk right in and start doing business. Improve that business.
Yeah, until you got to fix the toilet or something, and then all of a sudden you got to put in a whole new ADA compliant deal. Disaster.
That is true as well. So.
Well, we finished up a little, 4 or 5 series episodes on employment, and now we're going to get into some sales talk, which I'm excited for.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot more to say on this than me, probably. So what do you got for us this week, Calvin?
Why everyone is a salesperson, even the boss.
All right. Let's see what we got going on here.
Truth bomb, every single person is a salesperson. Selling isn't just for business owners. It's for anyone who wants a promotion, right? You're selling your value. Anyone who wants a better relationship, selling your ideas. Anyone who wants to make friends, right? You're selling your personality. Sales equals communication. And communication changes your life.
All right. Well, I guess he's speaking of it in terms of everyone is just basically promoting themselves all the time, putting their best foot forward, And I can see some truth to that, but I don't know that it's always true in life. Now, in business, it should always be true. Everybody that's communicating with customers and anybody else, really, you're communicating with suppliers, whatever. You should be trying to sell, the good virtues of your business.
Yep.
And you should be upholding those virtues and selling people on why your business is good. Like I actually it's interesting that this topic comes up now because just this morning I was reading a thread where one of my competitors, one of my colleagues, someone that I highly respect, they showed off a case that they made. And of course, they always get a lot of compliments. But one of the comments was, they are the most professional in the business, very easy to work with, and then the comment below that was, it seems like that between, skill and superior construction, there's always attitude, And these guys have none of it. And I took that kind of personally, because I'm insecure for one thing. But, that's a topic between me and the therapist. But I took it kind of personally because in my field, right, I'm one of the few people, if not the only person, who is constantly out there discussing, debating, promoting the protection of the queue, right? So for those of you who are new to Turtlesmith, my primary business is making cases, pool cue cases. So I promote the protection, right? That's my main selling point. And always what I harp on. And this case maker, they use our interiors that we sell to them.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful that they think enough of us to allow us to protect their customers' cues.
Yeah.
And the exteriors that they wrap around those interiors are as good as it possibly gets. They're just amazing. But what amazes me about them is they are also very thoughtful on their construction. You know, the way they put it all together just comes together really well. So I'm always appreciative of what they're doing. But I was kind of taken aback by that comment, and I was thinking to myself, well, what is attitude? What does that mean, right? So if you're in business and you have something that is better than your competition, right? You've innovated, you've created something that's better. Are you not supposed to promote it?
Yeah.
And then if you do promote it and someone pushes back and says, like they've said to me, well, that's not necessary. You know, you're going overboard or you're going too far. Then are you not supposed to be able to back up whatever you're saying and prove that it's not just empty air and not just hype?
Yeah. Well, that's where the salesmanships come in. You know?
Right. And so that was my point there is that I feel like that if anyone has a unique selling proposition, they should be allowed to promote it without any pushback and without being told that they have attitude. Now, I know that's getting kind of far afield of the original every person is a salesperson, but every person in your business should be aware of the things that you do really well.
Yes.
They should know why you do it really well, what your company philosophy is, and they should back it up in knowledge and deed, you know, in my opinion, in their actions as well as their knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I agree with this person saying that everyone is a salesperson when it relates to business anyway. Everybody in your organization should be a salesperson for your company, whether it's the, you know, IT people or even the janitor. They should be promoting the company that they work for because they're excited to work there, and they should know all about your product. So.
Yeah. I'll go even a step further. I hired somebody new yesterday, and you know, she said, I can quit my job today, you know, and start tomorrow. And we said to her, hey, we understand if you need to give them 2 weeks. And what she said was, they have not treated me very well. So that person is very unlikely to be a salesperson for the company that she worked for yesterday.
Yeah.
And for sure, if they needed her today, they didn't have her.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So another part of this is that the boss, the corporation, the company, you need to always be selling the virtues of your company to your employees by treating your employees right so that they want to sell for you. They want to be a good representative.
Yeah, and that all comes down to company culture, like we talked about several episodes ago. Building the right company culture, having people excited about working at your company, having people engaged in your business helps to promote sales and promote good culture.
I also think it's a good idea to share, you know, as much as possible, you know, or as practical, to share numbers with your team, so that people kind of know the health of your business and how they can contribute to it.
Maybe. Kind of depends on the industry and what you're talking about. I would be cautious with that a little bit.
I know you and I really disagree on that point. I think, you know, I'm more edging more towards, you know, everybody should have some ownership. And you are generally a lot more cautious about that.
Right.
And we've had our talks about it, you know, but I do feel like that if there is a way to reward your employees for doing the things that bring more people in or generate more revenue, you should explore that, which is what I'm doing.
And we talked about that on a previous episode where we talked about giving revenue sharing or bonuses when reaching certain revenue. And I always think you should try to to share sales numbers when possible. But the overall health of the business or expenses that are out of the employee's control, sometimes you don't want to share everything.
Do you think sometimes though that owners should maybe poll their employees and say, what is it about this company that you even like? Do you even like being here?
Maybe, but how often are you going to get an honest answer? Even on those anonymous forms that people have to fill out, they're usually lying just so they don't get in trouble.
Oh, okay. Well, I might try it and see what happens.
Oh, yeah, give us some feedback.
Yeah.
What's next?
There's 8 ways to get leads, and you should understand one of them very well at the very least. There's 4 that you can do on your own, and there's 4 that you can use other people for. The 4 that you can do on your own is that you can reach out to people you know. Like if you look at every single follower you have on every single social media, every email that you've ever collected across all your email accounts, you probably have a few thousand leads throughout your lifetime, and you just ask them if they know anybody. The second is that you can reach out to strangers one-on-one, and that's cold calls, cold emails, so forth. The third is that you make content, and then the fourth is running paid ads. So if right now you're like, man, I need to get more leads. If you're not doing one of these 4 things, that's why you're not getting more leads. Like there's no other way to get leads. Now, if you want to use other people to get more leads, you use the core 4 to do these 4. So you can get customers who then use those 4 things to get you leads. You can get employees who then use these 4 things to get you more leads. You can get affiliates, and then you can get agencies who can do those same 4 things. No matter which of those 8 things I just went over, the first 4 start with you. And so you have to master one of them.
I really like this guy. He always gets right to the point when he's talking about stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's got one of those real direct, kind of ways of getting into people. This one's actually kind of a mild one. Usually he says something like, if you're not effing doing one of these effing 8 ways to do this, then you're effing gonna fail.
Well, his 4 ways of generating leads that you can do on your own is usually what people do anyway. Like that's the natural course of things. It's certainly how I did it. The first one is to get it leads through your own contacts, which that's what I did when I started my business. I talked to everybody I knew, all my friends and family, and then clients that I've worked with at other firms, took all of them as much as I possibly could, then getting referrals and then working on content like we're doing now. And then we're going to be starting paid ads soon.
So I think that there's one more way that he didn't really mention, and it's not mentioned a lot. It's kind of included in making content. But it is, I would classify this as being useful, right? And what I mean by that is if you participate in like discussion forums in your industry, or just general business forums, things like that, if you're one of the people that becomes useful because you're imparting good knowledge or factual knowledge or helpful knowledge to people, then you start to get recommended, you start to get sought out,
Well, to me, that's defined as creating content.
Yes, well, that's what I was saying. It's part of that creating content part, but it's a little bit different, right? You kind of have to approach it like the way that I approach it with the forums and things like that is I just generally try to have good input or good discussions with people where I'm not really promoting what I'm doing. I'm just being helpful, but I do make sure that my signature is there, which includes my business information. And then I find that people seek me out for business advice, and they then in turn recommend me when somebody in their circle needs something that I do, like making cases, for example. People will come back and they'll say, hey, Joe Smith told me to come talk to you because you're the best in the business for cases, right? And this won't be anything that I've ever asked Joe Smith to do. Yeah. Joe Smith might not even be my customer, just somebody I helped out with like maybe an import-export question or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's interesting, too, when he mentions these other 4, which are getting customers, employees, affiliates, or agencies to kind of do those original 4 with you. And I think too many small business owners jump to that instead of doing the work on their own. They're very quick to want to try to hire an agency or to bring on affiliates or to make their employees go out and cold call without having do it themselves. And I'm going to say when I first started my business, I was very poor at cold calling. I was nervous about it, terrible. I didn't want to do it. It seemed very uncomfortable. But in all honesty, it's one of the better ways as you're getting started. And I tried to farm some of that out in my beginning, early days of my business. But because I wasn't an expert on it myself and I wasn't good enough myself, I couldn't really relay to the agencies or to the ad people what I wanted and it just didn't work very well. So
No,
you really need to
yeah.
become an expert on it yourself before you think about hiring an agency.
Listen, I understand that all too well. You know, a lot of people they when they see my activity online, they can't understand it when I say that I hate to sell our cases,
Yeah.
right? Like I really, really hate the sales process of it.
Yeah. You like building them. That's
I
what
like
you do.
building them. I like presenting them. You know, I like it when people are touching them and fondling them. Wait a minute. I think I'm thinking of Diddy again.
Jesus.
Sorry.
Every episode.
I have to slip it in.
Yeah.
But no, but I like it when people are appreciating what I do.
Right.
But I don't like it when I feel like I have to convince them that what we do is good in a salesy way, right?
Right. Well, and that's
But-
because you didn't come from a sales background. You came
But I
from
did come from a
maker.
sales background.
Oh, okay.
Right? I did. I came from a flea market background where I basically
Oh, hustling.
we bought junk on Thursday night, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I sold all that junk for 10, 15 times what it was or 100 times what it was worth
Yeah.
on Friday morning,
Well, maybe that's why you hate it so much then.
you know? But the thing is that, as you said, you have to become good at it. You have to understand not only your product, but you have to understand the process.
Oh, yeah.
And I spent years on the road, literally cold calling. I printed out every pool room, every billiard supply place in the country. And as I drove down the road, I just called them and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be coming through town. You don't know me. I make pool cue cases. Do you have time? Can I stop in and show you my stuff?"
Yeah.
And I basically drug a bunch of cases in, you know, and pitch them. And the first, 20 times that I did that, I was just so freaking nervous. I was like, these people, I'm barging in. They don't want me there. After about the 20th time or so, I started to get pretty smooth with it.
Yeah.
And I started to feel confident. I started to understand what they were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really the important part, is to understand their business.
Oh, yeah. In almost every sales course you'll take, one of the very first lessons you learn is ask more questions or listen more than you're talking, Ask them questions. Find out what your customer needs before you start selling them on just what you want,
Exactly. A lot of people in business think that it's a if you build it, they will come type of situation.
Yeah, I have a lot of clients who've gone through that. They'll come to me, they'll have this great product or this great business, and like, we don't have any customers. What's going on?
Yeah. And it's just not true. In our business, we say, if you build it and you don't tell anybody, it just dies on the vine.
Right.
You could be the greatest case maker on earth with no business because these folks are busy.
Yeah. Well, and to be honest with you, I think a sales job as an early position for somebody in high school or in college or right out of college, taking some type of sales position is about the best thing you can do for your career. It helps you, and no matter what industry you're in, even if you become like a doctor or a lawyer or anything, having that sales background is just incredibly helpful.
But you have to get a good experience. Some people get a bad experience with that, and they become they don't. You have to kind of seek out a good mentor.
Yeah, I don't even know if this is still a job anymore because I haven't seen them in 20 years. But a lot of the old timers who I work with, a lot of guys who were mentors to me, and some business people that I've worked with that have been very successful. A vast majority of them started as door-to-door sales guys. Like that was the job.
That'll
that
make you or break you really quickly.
Yeah, that sharpens your teeth. I had a guy, he used to sell vacuums door to door, and then another guy did kitchen appliances, and one guy did knives. But they said that was the best education they got. I don't know if you can still do that anymore.
You can.
I get the AT&T guy once in a while, but nobody's ever tried to sell me a vacuum.
Ironically, back when we first got here, and we were on super short money, by the way, so I did not need this vacuum. But I have to admit, I am a sucker for door-to-door salesmen.
Oh, yeah? If the pitch is good,
especially
you're
if they've got a physical product and they can show me, because I know, I like I said, I ran around the country, doing this, and I had to haul cases in and out and everything, and if you didn't get an order, it was deflating, you know, after you already did all that work.
Yeah.
So I get it, right? And these guys are hauling these vacuums around. I bought a Kirby vacuum, a $1,400 vacuum. And we were able to do it on payments and stuff. So, you know,
Right.
there was that. But I mean,
So you really ended up paying
we-
$2,000 for it?
no, actually, it was
interest?
interest free.
Oh, okay,
It was
good.
interest free. So
Good,
that's
good.
you know, there was that. But the guy was just really good at
Yeah.
it. He really demonstrated it well. He did a good job.
Yeah, he made you believe you needed a vacuum.
Yeah,
For
he made me
$1,400.
believe I needed that vacuum, or
Walmart
my
one.
children would die.
The Walmart
from
one
the
didn't cut it.
pathogens in the carpet. They would die. All right. So,
Well, here we got a question from a Reddit. At what point did you decide to hire a salesperson, if ever? What would you do? What would you differently? I think he forgot to do in there.
differently, yeah.
Small IT consultancy, IT project and support firm here. It's my second year in business, and the first year was almost entirely referral business. I made a very few sales calls, managed to have a great first year. Referrals have dried up, which was expected. So I'm considering hiring a sales company or local salesperson part-time. At what point did you decide to hire a salesperson versus doing the sales yourself? And did you prefer a part-time salesperson versus sales and marketing firm? So this goes back to exactly what I just said before. There's no reason to hire a marketing firm or a salesperson until you have exhausted all of your own resources. And it doesn't seem like this person has made very few sales calls.
yeah, I was going to say if referrals have dried up, if you find that you have time on your hands because you don't have enough customers, then get out there and start doing it yourself, you know, because you don't have enough business to hire a salesperson.
Yeah. So, and this is a little bit different for an IT consultant firm, but in my accounting firm here, we've got now 5 employees that are doing, you know, different aspects of the business. And I'm not even close to hiring a salesperson. We'll have another few accountants, another admin probably, and maybe even another attorney before we start even thinking about hiring somebody to go out and do sales, because that's my job. I'm the one out there getting referrals, chasing down leads, making the sales calls. That's my job as the boss.
And I want to say to that, right? I get sales calls all day long. You know, I don't know how we get on everybody's lists. You know, they're
Oh, I don't know how they track our phone numbers down, but it's wild.
But it's all day. Just as a matter of fact, just today I told one of my employees. You know, he came up to me with the phone again. He goes, "This is the tell, right?" He goes, he wants to speak to the business owner. And I told him, I said, dude, every time someone says they want to speak to the business owner, hang up on them.
Yeah.
You know, because it's always going to be a sales call. But here's the thing that trips me out, right? I have gotten calls, IT calls, by the way. People call me up and they say, hey, we want to do your website or we want to do this, right? And it occurs to me very early that they know nothing about my business. They know nothing about my website. They barely know anything about websites in general.
Yeah.
Right? And I always think to myself, who on earth hired this person to dial me up and call me and try to pitch me on this service that they themselves don't even understand?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a lack of knowledge from the top. The people at the top did not understand what it takes to really do a good sales call. And so they can't then train the people that they're hiring to do the sales call correctly.
Yeah, it's crazy, you know?
So in answer to this question, when you hire a salesperson is at probably the last possible minute. And then I would suggest using a sales and marketing firm before you bring just a dedicated salesperson on. Have an agency help you out a little by little. You know, maybe you're slacking in social media, so you get a little boost there. Maybe you're slacking in finding leads. You get a little help there before you get a salesperson.
Now, I'm going to tell you a story about hiring wrong, right?
Yep.
I hired a guy to go out and do sales. You know, he got an RV and he's going to go across the country. He's a pool player, a good pool player, and he was, you know, going to use that as part of his way to fund his travels.
Yeah.
And I made the mistake of treating him like a wholesale dealer who was buying in bulk, and I gave him a 40% commission.
Yeah.
So not only was that horrible, right? Because I'm giving away almost half of my revenue or half of my, you know, sales volume there. But what he did to go out and sell the cases was he would just drop the price.
Yep.
And I had to stop him from doing that. I was like, dude, don't. You're devaluing the product.
Yep.
You know, and he was only doing that because he had so much room to do it. He knew that he's getting anywhere between 100 and 60% of the retail price. And so he, thought, hey, no problem. I'll give this guy, 30% off. I'll give him 25. I'll give him 20, whatever. So he had a really good year while our bank account was pretty low, the first year that he did it. So the second year, I had spoken with one of my mentors who was a very wealthy person who retired from one of the telcos, not Verizon, but one of the other ones. Anyway, Sprint. He retired from Sprint. And I told him what I had done, given this guy 40% commission, right? Yeah. And I basically, he used a virtual form of a baseball bat to hit me upside the head and say, what the hell were you thinking, right? So then I wrote up a contract where I offered him 20%. I was like, this is not sustainable, for us. And the guy declined it. He actually quit and over that and decided not to sell the cases. Yeah. Which turned out to actually be great for us because now we were keeping 100% and we did the sales. And our bank account went up, and our sales went up and everything was great. But I always wondered about that because looking around the industries and everything, various sales jobs and everything, it seems like 20% was still pretty darn generous.
Yeah, it definitely is a good commission.
Yeah.
One of the other things I wanted to mention while you were talking there is people often hire sales people, like small businesses often hire salespeople thinking that they're going to bring in all this extra business and they're going to pay for themselves, kind of deal. So a lot of people don't budget properly when bringing these salespeople on. Their business is drying up and they use it almost as like a last ditch effort. And it really ends up being a disaster. So again, to kind of answer that question, when to bring a salesperson on is when you just cannot take another sales call, you just don't have enough time. Your business is going so well that it's impossible to take all the calls. That's when you need to hire a salesperson, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree.
So this next question is salespeople in very small companies, so less than 20. Where does sales ends and biz development / growth hacking begin? I know many people in this sub have an SDR team, which is a sales development team, or an AE, which is account executive to back them up. I don't, so I'm eating a lot of my own dog food as we grow to the first 10K paid seats. For those of us in small orgs, how much of the sales process do you do yourself and what do you automate? Is this type of growth more geared towards startup worlds? Can sales be more broadly defined? So that last question is kind of interesting. Can sales be more broadly defined? Sales is just everything that brings revenue to your business, but also a little bit about making your customers feel good about their purchase as well. We talked about that a little bit in the advertising and marketing. Some of your marketing and some of your sales is to get the initial hooks in to get your customer to spend money, but also some of them is to confirm that purchase to make them want to spend more later, or to be happy that they came to you.
Right. I always try to make any sales also about marketing.
Yeah.
I try to give my customers reasons, or I try to give my customers enough information that they can explain their purchase to other people in a way that benefits us, that basically markets what we do.
Yeah.
Because I find that often, right, if a customer comes to you based on the strength of your product or referrals, word of mouth even, I find that a lot of times they don't really have the information. They just know that somebody that they know bought something that looks good or that they like it, but they don't really know why that person bought it other than it looks good.
Yeah.
And
you like to really inform your customers about your product. Make sure that they know everything, which is not unusual, but not really common. I think a lot of people are just happy to get the sale. They don't care how they got it. And you like to go the extra mile to help them really understand the product in full. You have a lot of schematics available showing everything about cases so that your customers are really knowledgeable about your product. And I imagine that really helps with word of mouth sales and reputation.
It does. You know what the most gratifying and justifying thing about that method is whenever I am browsing the internet and I'm kind of, going through these forums, and somebody will have a thread of something like, what case should I buy? Right.
Yeah. And somebody else jumps in for
someone else jumps in, and they tell everyone about my case better than I could.
Yeah.
And they know everything about it, like they've watched my videos, they're a fan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally like, sometimes it's literally like comic book fandom or something, where they really know all of the lore and all of the, they know all the personal stuff about me and everything, because I've done this. Sometimes they'll say things about me that I even forgot about myself. So, it's pretty amazing, and if you can build that kind of a loyal fan base, then people really will go out and be, natural salespeople for you.
Yeah, and word of mouth is the best sales that you can get.
We're going to talk about that next week, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely in our little arc here of sales about how great word of mouth is. Back to this question just a little bit here. I think this is geared towards like a tech type of company, especially when they're talking about growth hacking and development for a small company. And it even says there's this type of growth more geared towards the startup world. So I'm not super into the tech-based companies and how that venture capital and Silicon Valley nonsense really works. But I know that they bring a lot of sales guys on early. They're really selling their product before maybe if it's even done sometimes. And I have to really caution anybody who's not in that world to go about that. You really want to make sure you have your business structure in place, everything's working before you're doing these growth hacks or selling like crazy.
Well, the biz dev growth hacking, I guess, as they're saying it right there. Mm-hmm. A lot of those companies will say, we need to capture, audience. We need to capture accounts.
Right.
We can lose money, and they plan for that, right?
Yeah, like Uber lost money for I think they're still losing money.
Amazon lost money. Amazon told their shareholders, all their early investors and everything, Jeff Bezos said, I am absolutely prioritizing growth over profit, right? So we will lose money.
Yep.
You're along for the ride, don't go crazy. We're going to lose money for 10 years. And then once we've captured enough of the market, then we're going to turn the heat up on sales. And that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, and we're actually doing that with the company I work with now. They're gearing up towards a sale of their company here in the next couple of years. But we have 100% prioritized revenue over profit. And we've had 30% growth every year over the last 4 years here. And we're going to continue 30% this year. So the company is great, but we're still barely breaking even after a few years of losing money. So it was all planned from the beginning, but you really have to pay attention to that. And you have to have a good plan in place.
You have to have a good plan, and you have to have enough money to weather that.
Yeah, and somebody who knows how to maneuver the bills.
Right. And I think what a lot of people don't understand about that is a viable strategy as long as you have the resources to do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand how a company can be very popular and unprofitable.
Right.
When it's not malfeasance, when it's not the owner out there buying 10 Ferraris a day and stuff like that. Right. How can you have a lot of revenue coming in?
Yeah.
And still not be profitable? And it's because you're using that revenue, you're using those resources to build. You're using it to build out your presence.
Well, that kind of business model is somewhat untenable for a lot of us. But I'm sorry, can you bring that back up one more time, please? I wanted to answer the last part there. So for those of us in small organizations, how much of the sales do you do yourselves and what do you automate? I hear a lot of people talking about automation and AI coming in and how it's going to make sales and everything so much easier. And maybe I'm just beyond the curve, but I still do all of it myself. I don't know how you really automate stuff. I mean, I've tried mass market emails and stuff, but they're just terrible on the returns.
Honestly, I think that's something we should start to look into a little bit more closely. I get constantly on Facebook for some reason. I'm constantly getting these, this 28-day AI course, learn all the right prompts and everything. AI is definitely here.
Yeah.
You know, it may be even a misnomer to call it AI right now. But the fact is if you tell AI to do something and it produces something like an app, you know, or it produces some kind of automation for your calendar or something that actually works, it creates a tool, that's a useful thing.
Yeah.
Now, how to get it to do that, right, is what a lot of these people promise to teach you, or they're developing. So there is a field now where people are at least promising to show you how to do these things and how to use AI automation. How much of that is BS and how much of it is good is something we don't know right at this moment.
Well, I just wanted to use this question as another caution for everyone, is that don't just jump to the automation. Even if AI and everything becomes much easier and you can automate it, you still should learn the basics for yourself and really become an expert in, you know, cold calling or affiliate marketing or working with these agencies or something. You need to be an expert to how to do the sales yourself before you automate.
Let me say this, and maybe I'm misreading this in here. How much of the sales do you do yourselves and what do you automate? Whenever I go to try to find some information about a company, right? Let's say that they run an ad that gets my attention, and I hit like the learn more button or contact us or whatever. If I get into this loop, right, that I feel is automated, you know, like what's your name, what's this, you know, we'll call you in 22 days or whatever, you know, where it's just this constant, you know, where I feel like I'm being handled. Yeah. You know, and I'm not being handled by a person, I'm being handled by a bot, right? I just bail. Yeah. I just bail because I'm like, you know what? If you don't even think enough of me as a person to figure out how to talk to me like a person or get me to a person, then no, I'm not with it.
I'm with you on that one.
So how much do you automate? Maybe all you automate is, thanks a lot for contacting us. A human being will call you back as fast as humanly possible. Yeah. You know?
Well, I think that's it for today on the salespeople and a little bit of salesmanship. We're going to have a few more episodes on like cold calling, word of mouth, those kind of things. Any other final thoughts for this week?
No, man, just, well, you know, when I say no and then I start talking.
It happens about
crazy.
Every episode.
No, I don't have any more thoughts this week, okay? So
well,
that's it.
My final thought is just be cautious when in engaging sales teams or hiring a sales guy. You really need to do the legwork yourself before you try to outsource that as much as possible.
Yeah, and know your shit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that's Turtlesmith lesson number 1 is just know your shit.
Know your shit.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, find us at turtlesmith.com and all of our socials, Turtlesmith OK. We'll see you next week.
All right. See everybody next week.
This is always annoying to ask, but if you're liking this content, please like and subscribe. It's the best way for us to get more followers and more people engaged in this great business content. You can also follow us on all socials at Turtlesmith OK and find us at turtlesmith.com.
Please like and subscribe.